I'm calling member the Heffron.
Madam Speaker, I am delighted at 2:02 a.m. this Tuesday morning to be able to contribute to this very important and lengthy debate on the Greyhound Racing Prohibition Bill of 2016, and wish to inform the House that I support the opposition's position, not just because I am bound to, but because it is right. I, like any right-thinking human being, was mortified at seeing the ABC Four Corners program killing time in February 2015. I could not believe that any human being could treat animals like I witnessed on that television program. And in fact, seeing those images is firmly placed in my mind. Now, preventing cruelty to animals and protection of animals is one of the very fabrics of mankind, if that age-old expression is still politically correct. Because the fact of the matter is that you can go back to biblical times, 3,500 years ago, to Genesis, where the biblical writers enshrined the laws of mankind in terms of the protection of animals and the prevention of cruelty to animals. In fact, the protection and welfare of animals was actually quite harsh in biblical times, where animals could only be slaughtered for human needs. Animals could only be slaughtered in a particular humane way for human means, a practice that is still followed by the Muslim and Jewish faiths. Animals had to also rest on Sabbath, just as human beings were required to rest on one day out of 7. And so human beings have, for a lengthy period of time, advocated those principles, and those principles are actually enshrined in our modern day laws. To do what I saw on the Four Corners program is clearly an offence under section 530 of the Crimes Act and carries from recollection 5 years jail. So the laws are in place to protect animals. Now, after the February 2015 ABC Four Corners program, there was a parliamentary inquiry, and then an inquiry by the Honourable Michael McHugh QC. And Michael McHugh, a working class Newcastle boy who studied law part-time through the Solicitors Admission Board, rose to become one of the greatest jurists that this country has ever produced, and rose to be a Justice of the High Court. Known to be a black-letter lawyer, much to the chagrin, I suppose, of many of us who were more progressive, his credentials are beyond reproach. He recommended, following his special commission of inquiry, that it was, and this is so important to the determination I came to in respect of this bill, that it was for Parliament to determine whether or not the industry had lost its social licence as a result of some terrible, terrible matters that had been exposed during his inquiry, and handed it over to Parliament to make that decision. Now, one of the reasons that the conduct of the government and then said if Parliament if Parliament was of the view the industry should continue, he then incorporated 79 recommendations. One of the reasons that the Honourable Michael McHugh used that expression, firstly social licence, there's nothing new about that expression. If you look at the CSIRO website, you'll see that that's used by the CSIRO, for example, to refer to whether mining should occur in a particular area. But the reason that the Honourable Michael McHugh referred the matter to Parliament to decide is this. whenever there is a failure of an industry, whether it be the atrocities of a section of the Greyhound industry or any other industry, you can trace the responsibility back to the regulator. You can trace the responsibility back to the government of the day. And so that what was witnessed on the Four Corners program and what was witnessed in some of the evidence that was disclosed in the Special Commission of Inquiry is the failure of the government of the day. Now, this government of the day has been the government since March of 2011. How many people have been prosecuted for criminal offences under Section 530 of the Crimes Act, and how many have been sent to jail? How has this industry, in 5.5 years of this government of the day, been able to get away with what it has got away with in some sections? Now, the reality is, it is the fault of the executive government. And that is why the Honourable Michael McHugh said Parliament should make the decision. Because what happened in this case is it was the very executive government who was at fault for what we discovered, who then decided that this industry should have closed. Now, why couldn't the matter have gone to some joint committee? There are horrendous consequences from the closure of this industry. There are horrendous consequences, not only to the economy of New South Wales and to regional New South Wales and to people's jobs who are entailed, but what's going to happen to the estimated, 12,000 greyhounds on the closure of the industry. There is a balance that needs to be struck, both between the preservation and cruelty to the animals that have been affected by the industry and the economy of New South Wales and the regional communities. And that can best be done by a collective decision-making process of the Parliament. Now, I must say, Madam Speaker, I didn't come to my final position in relation to my own view about this bill when I told the House I believe the opposition position is right, until I heard a debate from my colleagues in the party room. I had read the McHugh report and the library research paper. I must confess I didn't read the annexures, and I didn't know what the correct decision was until I heard many of my colleagues with different views and opinions from different parts of the state express their views before I reached my opinion. And I reached my opinion through a different source and for different modes of reasoning, and it's a mode of reasoning that I have already articulated to the House. And I would have thought something that has a serious consequence of that, with a report that actually exposes a failure of the executive government who have been running this industry for 5.5 years, whether it be through boards or other people, should have actually left it to the elected representatives of the Parliament to collectively decide where the appropriate balance was. And that was taken away from us all. This was not an ordinary public policy position. This wasn't an ordinary decision where the government of the day goes about accountable to Parliament for managing the day-to-day operations and it comes to the Parliament to change the laws to be more effective or to change the administrative structure. This was actually a special commission of inquiry that exposed the executive government's own failure, who is accountable to this House, and their response is just simply, I'm going to shut down this industry because I have failed to properly protect the greyhounds and other animals associated with the minority of this industry. Now, really, it is the process in which the government has reached this position is where the government stands indicted. The government stands indicted by the Honourable Justice McHugh's report for its own failure, and it's the government stands indicted because it's put its hands up and says, I don't think we, the elected government of New South Wales, are capable of stopping the heinous criminal offences occurred by the way in which animals have been treated in this industry. And as a result, people right across the state, innocent people whose livelihoods depend upon this industry, are going to be affected by the government's own failure. And that is why the system is broken, and that is why this House should reject this bill. Yeah.